Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chaiyya Chats. My name is Ruben Thomas, and I'm very happy to be joined by Reverend Father Matt Alexander. Matt and thanks for coming on again.
Hey, Ruben. Good to be
Hey,
back.
nice to have you here, Achin. And I'm excited to talk about this topic today as well. This is going to be a continuation of the mini dating and relationship series that we've been doing. For those who may not have gotten a chance to listen to the first episode, we talked about the story of Samson and the first part of his life and how attraction and lust played into his relationships and how attraction and lust plays a part in our relationships as young couples, whether it's in high school or in college. And we saw that the initial feelings of attraction and lust led to a lot of destruction down the road for Samson. And we see that going forward in his story, which is what we're going to be talking about today, which the topic is unhealthy relationships. And now we're getting into the part of Samson's story that I think maybe more people might be familiar with as well. So, Ajin, where do you want to start us off again with the story of Samson?
I think let's just read the scripture and let's read the portion on Samson and Delilah. It's Judges chapter 16. And I'm reading from the Orthodox Study Bible, and there are just a few minor details that might be a little bit different if you're looking at a different version. But Judges 16, 1 to 21. Now Samson went to Gaza and saw a harlot there and went into her. When someone told the Gazites, saying, Samson has come here, they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the gate of the city. They are quiet all night, saying, let us wait until dawn and we will kill him. Samson slept till midnight and rose up. And at midnight he took hold of the doors of the gate of the city with the two gateposts and lifted them up with the bar and placed them on his shoulders. He then carried them to the top of the mountain facing Hebron, and he set them there. Sometime thereafter he came to love a woman in Alsarek, whose name was Delilah. And the leaders of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, trick him and find out where his great strength lies. Learn by what means we may overpower him, so we may bind him and humble him. If you do, every one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies, and with what you can be bound, that you may be subdued and controlled. And Samson said to her, if they bind me with 7 damp cords, not yet spoiled, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. So leaders of the Philistines brought her 7 damp cords, not yet spoiled, and she bound him with them. And with her in the private chamber an ambush was set. And she said to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. But he broke the cords as if someone should break a thread of flax when it touches the fire. Thus the secret of his strength remained unknown. Then Delilah said to Samson, indeed, you have deceived me and told me lies. Now therefore tell me what you may be bound with. So he said to her, if they bind me securely with new ropes that have never been used, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. Therefore Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them, and those in ambush came out of the private chamber, and she said to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. But he broke them off his arms like thread. And Delilah said to Samson, indeed, you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me, I entreat you, with what can you be tightly bound? And he said to her, if you weave the 7 locks of my head into a braid and secure them together with the wall peg, I will be weak like any other man. And so it happened when he was asleep, Delilah braided the 7 locks of his head and secured them with the wall peg, and said to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And he woke from his sleep and pulled out the peg. Then Delilah said to Samson, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You deceived me a 3rd time, and you have not yet told me where your great strength lies. And it came to pass, after she pestered him continually with her words and pressured him sorely, that his spirit failed him almost to death. Then he told her everything in his heart, and said to her, no razor has ever come upon my head, for I have been a holy one of God from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like all other men. And Delilah discerned, he told her all his heart. And she sent and called for the leaders of the Philistines, saying, come up once more, for he told me all his heart. So the leaders of the foreigners went to her and brought the money in their hands. Delilah lulled Samson to sleep on her knees and called for a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. Thus she could finally subdue and control him, for his strength departed from him. And Delilah said, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. So he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. Then the Philistines took him, put out his eyes, and brought him down to Gaza. They bound him with fetters of bronze, and he was grinding grain in the prison house. T-Bone's the praise of God, bark more. It's a tough one. Definitely not a PG-13 story.
And it's interesting, like we've talked about, attraction and lust in the last episode. And we sort of see where Samson goes on his journey, and now he's in this very unhealthy relationship with Delilah, right? And there's many different layers here, but there are many opportunities where Samson himself could change the story.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I mean, part of it is you read it and you think about it, you're like, man, Samson, come on, man. Like, how do you, the very thing you just told her, you wake up the next day, and she's done, you tell her, if somebody ties me with a new rope, and suddenly she's got a new rope and you're tied up the next day, and you break it. And don't get me wrong, he probably felt very arrogant that he could break and do anything. But three times he wakes up and the very thing he told her, he's now been bound up with, or that has been done to him. It's like, come on, Samson, how do you not know that this is not Delilah is not on your side here?
And the saying, fool me once, right? And it happened 3 times.
Yeah, you're right. And I don't know what it was. What is it about Samson that just kind of keeps him there? That he just can't see. That even before they take his eyes out, he's blind to what's going on in this situation. We feel like, and you look at Samson, and it's easy to kind of judge him for that, to be this way. And we covered last time when we talked about lust, and how that affected him, and that it blinded him, and that he didn't listen to any counsel. But here he just did what he wanted. And the same thing, the story begins, and Samson's not innocent in the story either. And we began with this, he goes to a prostitute, and then again, this is now the third woman that now he's gotten into a relationship with Delilah here, and Delilah from the beginning, she clearly loves money more than she loves Samson, and is willing to betray him, and that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money that they offered her, but at the same time, it's how does Samson not see that?
And would you say that's a result of his lust, or maybe even his arrogance of just wanting what he desires and taking it? I mean, and you've seen that, in his story so far, there's been many examples of whatever he wants, he just takes it, and then he has that sense of entitlement, and I can do whatever I want, and nothing can happen to me.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. He says, Mom, in the beginning, the first woman, he said, Mom, Dad, I want this girl, give her to me, or get her for me, right? In this situation, he's the same thing. He's just, there's arrogance, there's pride, for sure in this, that nothing can take him down. And then finally this thing. But, on one side, it's easy to say, Samson, how blind can you be? But then out of experience, when we live life and we realize that that we make the same mistakes, that people make the same mistakes over and over and over and over again, here you have Samson, he's clearly being manipulated. It's the irony is even that she says, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? So she's accusing him of something that she's doing, projecting that onto him, because clearly her heart is not with him. And he shares his heart with her. Lo and behold, she uses that against him. And it's easy to judge him, but the flip side of this is, and a lot of, especially young relationships, a lot of people at an age who aren't really mature enough to handle this, and even older people who are in committed relationships and stuff, sometimes it can be a very, very unhealthy relationship, but they're so blind to it and they can't see it. Everybody around them can see that they're in an unhealthy relationship. So their friends see it, their the relatives and other people can see it very clearly. Like the writing's on the wall, but they can't read it themselves. Because in a given situation, when somebody's in an unhealthy relationship, I find a lot of times that they justify over and over and over and over again why this is there. They kind of refuse to see what's right there. Oh, you know what? And you see this cycle. It can be as bad as when it moves into abusive relationships, where it's, the cycle of sorry. Oh, is he sorry? She's sorry. And then we kind of come back up, and it circles back around later. It can be like something, like this manipulative kind of situations where, and people just constantly justify and justify and justify this, and lose all their other relationships, lose connections with everybody else that they care about. Like Samson at this point in the story, where is everybody? We saw him betray, go against his best man. We saw him forsake his family. So Samson's out on his own. He has no counsel, and this is where he falls.
And as you said, we try to justify the actions of others. And a lot of times it comes down to saying that they love me, right? Or I love them, right? And that's exactly what, as you said, Delilah says too, right? And I think we say the same, like, they're not that bad, right? Or that what they did wasn't that bad because they love me, right? Or I love them. And we think that overcomes any type of shortcomings or faults.
Yeah. Or even I made them do it. And then Delilah projects that on him too, right? She's, somebody who's in the situation of Delilah, she's blaming Samson for the things that she's done, right? And I don't know what it is about Samson that keeps him in this. Like you said before, the pride, the arrogance, or the lust, or whatever it be. But even it says like she pressures him so sorely that his spirit fails him almost to death. And we saw that before with Samson. And you're like, okay, at this point, how do you not know? Like, is this, what you're called to be living?
We don't know what's going on in Samson's mind in this situation, why he keeps going back and returning to the same situation. But at least in terms of relationships that we're in, or relationships that we know others are in, right? We kind of think that this is the one and only relationship sometimes, that if this is a person that we're seriously committed to, then we have to be all in and give them everything. And I think that sort of, it might blind us. Like you said, it kind of blinds us to what are we actually doing in this relationship, and is it healthy for both of us?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we move into like almost, and I'm talking specifically about dating, not about marriage. They're two completely different things. Oftentimes people who are dating act like they're married, and oftentimes people who are married act like they're dating. And they're two completely different things. But if you're dating in this situation, you can't, we can move into the situation where it's like, I can't give up on him. I can't give up on her. Because that would be wrong, like from a Christian standpoint. That's nonsense when you really get down to it. Like, don't get me wrong, we love unconditionally. Those things are there, but just because you're dating somebody doesn't mean you have to marry them. Don't get me wrong, you want to date with the purpose of getting to know somebody, ideally where you're trying to. And I discourage, people from dating at too young of an age and things like that. But what I'm saying is, again, if you get to know somebody, you realize that they're not the right person for you. They could be a good person. They could be a great person. They could be an amazing person and still not be the person who's right for you. And in that situation, you're dating somebody else's husband. You're dating somebody else's wife. And you can't, if it's not meant to be, if it's not God's will, and you're not submitting to that, then you can't force things to be something that it's not. And maybe it's not at this extreme, like this Samson Delilah situation, but at the same time, there are signs of an unhealthy relationship, things that clearly the two of them are not growing in this given situation. The two of them are not building each other up. This is like all the warning signs are there. And if he had counsel, if he could look around, people can give him advice. If he had a healthy head on his shoulders, he would have been able to see this. And I don't mean to blame Samson for everything, but That's not the point, it's not about that. I'm just trying to, when you love somebody and you care about them, you really want them to. Sometimes you just want to shake them and just like open your eyes and see what's right in front of you, but you can't. We can't save people. We can't do that. It's something that, God willing, they have to sometimes figure out themselves and come to that realization and to that level of repentance themselves.
Right. And I think that's an important thing you said, is that we can't save that person. I think a lot of times what keeps us in it is that we think we can change that person, we can redeem that person. They might have their faults, but maybe I'm the one who can make them a better person.
Yeah.
Right.
And at that point, we're missing the entire point of marriage too, right? Like that's not, marriage is not a ministry in that sense. You're not evangelizing your spouse in that sense. Where, don't get me wrong, iron sharpens iron. We help each other. We bear with one another, and that's post marriage. When we move into premarital counseling and things like that, we can talk about how it works in a different sense. But that's not, what this is. It's not like dating is not a ministry where you're trying to, get the other person to kind of come along and change to be the person that you want them to be. That's again like a very selfish way of looking at things. That's not what this is at all. Like the person should inspire you to be a better person. That's true, right? I want to be a better person because that person inspires me. Like in that sense, it's iron sharpening iron. It's growth. It's building. But it shouldn't be one person dragging the other person along.
Right. We see Samson here staying in this relationship, and especially in the next episode, we'll get into the consequences of what happens because of that. But like we said earlier, there are many opportunities that he had where he could have said, maybe I need to get out of this. And I think we probably have the same things happen in our lives. I think God gives us certain opportunities where we can sort of evaluate this relationship. If you stay in this unhealthy relationship too long, I mean, Samson is the extreme case.
Yeah.
Right? But I think if you stay in this type of relationship too long, I think that's probably damaging to yourself as a person, especially in future relationships as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we say, it's not a big deal, it's not a big deal, it's not a big deal, things whatever it be. And then lo and behold, for Samson, a lot of these things, he shares his heart. And you feel bad for him in that situation, even though he's done so much wrong till this point. You still feel so bad for him because here he pours out his heart and shares his heart with her, and then right there, she cuts his hair, and in a Sunday school sense, where it was like, oh, his source of his hair strength was in his hair. It's not. It's because the hair was part of the Nazirite vow, and the moment they cut the hair, he ceases to be a Nazirite. And you can see he didn't. When he wakes up, he didn't know that the Lord had departed from him. That he had once he ceases to be a Nazirite, he loses the strength, because that was the source of everything. And we too, we don't realize sometimes, we say it in Psalm 51, take not thy Holy Spirit from me. There's a certain situation sometimes we don't realize, that sometimes, we can fall away and we don't even realize it. And lo and behold, we lose what we once had and such. And the punishments is horrible. They come and they put out his eyes, they gouge out his eyes. Such a horrible thing. But why did they gouge out the eyes? It's the eye that leads them to sin in the beginning. It's lust. Ultimately it's lust that caused that, like, him to fall. Samson was strong physically, but this was his weakness. And it's just it's sad to see that he destroys himself with his own sin. That his sins come and leads to all this destruction for himself.
And then in terms of our own relationships too, like you see in his story, where it's at his most vulnerable, and when he opens his heart, is that where he gets betrayed. And a lot of times, when we pour all of our emotion and love into a relationship and it doesn't work out, it's hard to have that trust again in another person, right? I mean, being in these unhealthy relationships, it really does affect your mindset and your emotions moving forward.
It does. You're exactly right. And you're in an unhealthy relationship, and then after a breakup, after any breakup, it's hard to trust somebody again. It's hard to kind of grow and to move on from that. And we'll talk about the path to redemption, I think, next time. But that's That's so true. That Samson, again, you feel for him in a certain sense because of this. But yeah, I can. For a lot of people coming out of that, it's hard to learn to trust again. It's hard to learn to grow. Ultimately, we direct and we learn to trust God. If Samson had trusted from the beginning, God who loved him, then and cared for him and followed that desire, I think that it would have spared him a lot of this heartache. It would have
Mhm.
spared him all of this destruction. All sin leads to destruction. If it's not meant to be, if it's something that you're forcing and pushing for, it's going to lead to destruction, to a lot of hurt. And I don't mean to say, you get the idea. I don't want you to be listening to this podcast and be like, turn it off and be like, text your significant other, your boyfriend or girlfriend, and be like, Madison and Ruben told me to break up with you. We're done. See you. I get it, and in that sense as well. It's just, I mean, if you gotta do that, go for it. I don't mind being bad cop, but at the same time, it's just a matter of like sometimes we need to think with a clear head and understand and be in the spirit, to quiet the desires of our own heart and to be hear the spirit talking to us and guiding us and helping us and trying to figure things out, to be open to an outside perspective, to listen to the counsel of your family members, your friends, your siblings, um, the people who have a healthy head on their shoulders, and yes, your spiritual mentors as well, to be able to listen, to talk. Once you're open to an outside perspective, you're suddenly in a much healthier place, right? Because if you find yourself having to justify and justify and justify the other person, something's wrong. But if you can, have this open conversation, you can talk and listen to an outside perspective. You're automatically in a position where you're able to hear what God has for you and to listen. And I'm not saying everybody's always going to be right. There might be situations where I don't want it to be a situation where, people then I have to follow exactly what my parents say. No, that's not exactly what this is. But you have to be your heart has to be open.
Right.
Has to be, if it's closed, then most likely you're making bad decisions.
Well, I think that's a good place to end this video here. Like you said, the next episode will, wrap up the story of Samson and see what his path of redemption is and how, that relates to us in our own spiritual lives and how it goes into our own relationships. But like Uchin said, if you guys ever need a person to blame in your relationship, Uchin's always available. Just say, Madison made me do it. Madison told me, and it should work out then, right? No, but Madison, thank you for coming on with us.
I look forward to all the angry phone calls.
Yes, if you need his phone number, just reach out directly. We'll be able to give it to you. But Achin, thanks again for talking with us. For those of you listening, I hope you all stay safe and please stay tuned for another episode of Chaiyya Chats.